Agent pros are walking in and sometimes making the decision to say, because of the fact that you said you want to list the home for 30% over market value that we reviewed and you need it to sell within the next 3 weeks, I may not be the best listing agent for you.
Hi, welcome to the Posner Property Perspective. We're going to have a great podcast today. We're here with Renee Funk, who is an outstanding agent. She runs a team. She's also speaking now across the U.S. I don't know if it's gone international yet. We'll have to find out. So we'll have a lot to unfold today in how real estate can be taken to the next level. And a lot of this has to do with the words you say, which is one of the things Renee speaks about. I'll let you tell you a little bit about your history, Renee, and then we'll jump into it.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeannie. I'm super excited to be here today and looking forward to us having a conversation about the importance of communication for all business owners and entrepreneurs. Specifically, I think you and I'll unpack how it relates to real estate agents and how our communication strategies and approaches can impact our buyers and sellers. One of the most overlooked skill sets that business owners have and should continue to evolve is the words that we use and how we show up in our communication skills. The good news is that this is something that anyone can learn and put focus on to continue to build. Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to see where this conversation brings us.
One of the things that we were talking about is how communication is so important. When going out on a listing appointment, I like to tell the client what to expect from me, what communication they're going to get from me every week on how their house is doing with showings, with offers, compared to the other listings around them. And you have a great system for that. So I was wondering if you could address that.
Absolutely. Most markets, as we record this conversation today, most markets in the United States are seeing some changes, and many markets in the United States are seeing an escalation of days on market. Perhaps they're seeing some price reductions. Perhaps they're just seeing overall a shift. An important thing that real estate leaders can do is to understand the data and how that impacts the sellers in this conversation are the most important individuals for us to help be educated. A lot of agents, especially those of you, we love you. If you acquired a license 2020 to date, we love you. You're skilled, you're capable, you're hungry, and you are able to serve the seller. There's a piece that agents who are newer to the industry need to continue to gain, and that's context. So for sellers who are in conversation with agents, what sometimes gets left behind is agents may not realize what it was like in 2014. They may not realize what it was like in 2010, 2008, when a market could be seeing longer days on market and sometimes position a property to think about a price reduction. So what does all of this mean to real estate agents is the pros are going into any listing consultation the moment they're sitting down with sellers at the kitchen table, and they're taking the steps to be proactive to, number one, hopefully avoid any need for a price reduction. What happens at the kitchen table when a professional listing agent shares a conversation with sellers is a critical moment. Now, what you're referring to, Jeannie, one of the approaches is there are 7 data points that every seller must be in tune with. 7 data points that are critical. When a seller is considering listing the property on the market, the seller needs their agent, themselves, and the market to be tightly connected. To understand and have that connectivity, it's the agent's job to review the data. Now, there's 2 data points that are often overlooked by agents. The first data point is when you're assessing what's going on in the market is looking at comparable properties. Those are properties that buyers would drive around and look at while they're looking at your subject property, comps. And look and see of those comps, how many have changed from active to pending status over the last 7 to 14 days, specifically over the last 7 to 14 days. What that data is important and showing the agent as well as the seller is, what are buyers choosing right now? What are
What you
buyers
just
choosing?
That is so important, because it used to be when we would do comps, we'd go back first 3 months, 6 months, you can even go back a year. Now, the time, because in Georgia, it's definitely changed to more of a buyer's market.
Yep.
We have to look what's happened in the last 30 days and what's happened in the last 2 weeks, what's gone under contract, because that's going to give me a better idea of what the market is versus something that happened 6 months ago.
True, and
So
good point that the way that a property establishes go-to-market list price when you're assessing comps can be different than when you're looking at your weekly updates with sellers, for example. So when we look at the 7 data points sellers need to be aware of with their agent, there's 2 parts. There's the data points you review at the kitchen table, and then there's the data points that you review on the weekly, both of which the time periods should be where the buyer's going. That's that active to pending status. And it's typically better to stay pretty tight in to say over the last 7 to 14 days, what are buyers choosing to go to contract on? Now, here's where agents sometimes step into a trap is agents are guilty, many cases, of just sending information. Let's just send the information. Let's send a CMA. Let's send a report. That's essentially like being a data dump. Here you go, seller. Here's all the information. Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, figure it out. Pros choose to be in data dialogue. Now, when you launched this podcast today, together with the 2 of us, you mentioned the importance of communication. Communication is everything. And the difference between a pro and an agent who hopes they have a plan is that you sit down and you're in a conversation. When you look at that active to pending status where buyers are choosing, you're looking at it together. You're saying, here's the 6, 7, 8 properties that buyers chose the last 7 to 14 days over the subject property. Let's look at it together. And agents, show your MLS. How does this kitchen compare to the subject property? How does this front elevation compare to the subject property? Look at it together so that you are united with your sellers in a dialogue, not just sending the information in a hope and a prayer that the seller understands how to see what the data means.
So one of the things I like to do when I go on a listing presentation is I say, I'm going to act as if you are a buyer and we were going out, and I'll show them houses that are comparable and ask them, how does this kitchen compare to yours? How does that backyard compare to yours?
Yep.
How does the wallpaper in your house compared? And it helps get them seeing it. So I almost don't have to ask for certain things to get done. They'll naturally see the progression of why we need to paint or why we need to do certain elements to their house to get it in the best light.
Correct. And in that same process, there's a second data point that most agents are missing out on in dialogue with their sellers, and that's the failed listing category. Now, the failed listing category, for the agents listening in, most of what creates failed listings is going to be your expireds, your withdrawns. Some of you listening, you may have a status in your MLS called canceled. Whatever your statuses are in your MLS, what you're wanting to pool together for failed listings reporting is whatever is in your MLS that sellers had to choose to pull it from the market. Some of you may have a temporary off market, whatever that is that says seller made a choice to go to market. Seller did not go to sold status. They chose another route. Here in Central Florida, where I come to you for this recording, I have a real estate team in the Funk Collection, specifically in Orlando. And over the last 90 days, being obsessed with failed listings reporting has been a game changer. Now, I come to you proudly saying the Funk Collection has 0% failed listings in 2025. However, the market is showing different data. In Southwest Orlando, there's 4 core zip codes. That failed listing statistic is flirting between 30 and 40%, depending on price of property. What does that mean to the seller? That means that out of every 10 listings that hits the market, 3 to 4 sellers have to give up or choose to give up. Not a fun data point to review, however, critically important. Take it one step further when you're looking at failed listings is show the seller, specifically at the kitchen table, here's what listings didn't work. The seller chose to go to market. Now let's dig in deeper. What is it about it specifically that didn't work? You can show the breadcrumbs. Usually it was overpriced. Maybe the condition wasn't warranting the price that they went to market with. You can look through the photos. There's a story to be told for the seller who's sitting at a kitchen table with a pro to make sure that seller doesn't end up in the failed listing category. No seller wants to hit the market, go through the work that is required to position their property, leave the house for showings, take the pets. It's not easy. Nobody really wants to sell a home. But a pro agent can do the work before the work to say, we're going to make sure you're not in the failed listing category. For the agents listening in, you need to become obsessed with that MLS data in your market. Understand what's not working. One little footnote in addition to the failed listings, when you're looking at failed listings, you can also include active listings. Now, active listings might not, most would argue, be failing listings. However, they're leaning in that direction. If you're in a market that has escalating days on market, you best be looking with your sellers, listing agents out there, we're talking to you, at what's not working that's in active status, because many markets are showing that agents are afraid to talk to their sellers about what true market value is. Some agents are being a collector of listings. They're taking listings regardless of what the list price is. Now they're overpriced. And what do, Jeannie? They sit. So I argue and debate with many agents across the country. When you're looking at failed listings data in your MLS, it also behooves you to look at the active status with your sellers and say, let's look also what's in active status that's also not selling.
One of the things that we have to look at here, which goes to those days on market, is agents will have it on market, take it off for a few days and put it back on to get that restart on days on market.
Yeah.
Because so many agents are doing this, I'm having to go back and look at when was the first time it was listed? And how many times did they go and take it back? So truly, how many days it was on market? And I recently this happened with a house where the house around the corner had said it'd been only on the market when we were getting ready to list for 20 days. But when I went back and researched it, it had been on the market for a year. And it had started out $70,000 on a $320,000 home. $70,000 is a lot. It had started out $70,000 over the price it was now. And I had to show that to the seller that I'm working with, going, we've got to look to see if you overprice it, what happens?
The nail on the head here is both to the consumer and to agents. Consumers don't see all the back history in many cases. I know there's some portal websites and there's some syndication that can be present. And actually, we can go down this route. But if you want to ask me later about the marriage that happened between ChatGPT and Zillow, that's something every agent needs to be aware of.
Yes.
However, as we sit today, most consumers don't know all the backstory that goes on with a property. So agents, you also need to think if you're sitting at a listing consultation today at the kitchen table in a home that fair market value, homes are trading somewhere around the 1 million mark based on its given condition. And there's a house on the market 5 doors down that's fully remodeled, that is on the market for 100 days, that's priced at 1.5, and that's been price reduced 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and they had an agent change and it's gone on and off the market. The consumer sitting at the kitchen table with you doesn't understand all that backstory. This is the sign of a pro, Jeannie, that you're doing, is you're saying, prospective sellers, let's dig deep. Don't take it at surface value. And that, my friend, first of all, kudos to you for doing that, is really showing the seller. You're showing them insight, because the consumers don't need any more data. They have access to every data. Newsflash, agents
Yeah, they
aren't
do.
holding the data. There's no secret data you're holding, agents. The consumer has all the data. What the consumer needs from agents who are pros, insight.
They need
Insight
the
in
guidance.
what the data means to them. And that is why CMAs are dead. If agents are sending CMAs, it's just a data dump. They're dead. It's conversation in a data dialogue with a pro and the consumer that is going to continue to help agents grow their business. A consumer needs somebody who will be consulting with them, who will take the courageous curiosity to say, what are you aiming to achieve? And by when do you need to achieve it? Super, super important questions.
So I but have a client right now who they're already out of the house, but they're not motivated to sell. And it's me giving them data and keep on presenting it so that they understand, but this is why it's not selling. And it really is costing you to have it just sitting there. So a lot of it is that dialogue and helping them come around to understand. And I've had some consumers, the first time sent them the first 2 weeks, I was sending them information about how many showings we had, what was happening. And on the third week, when we hadn't had an offer and we'd been getting showings, he's, no, let's drop it $5,000. I can see from what you've been showing me. And we went under contract. And I didn't have to ask for the price reduction. He saw it from the data I presented him. And matter of fact, we closed last Friday. So
congratulations on that. And that's an example of being in data dialogue. When I coach and train sales pro, these are some of the approaches that we discuss is the difference between an agent or a sales pro that just sends information. Again, remember what we all have right here. It's all right here. The seller in this case needs to be able to hear from you back and forth and ask you questions.
It's funny because you were showing it as a phone, and I always say calling our phone a phone anymore is not accurate. It's like you're walking around with a computer, but people have forgotten how to use it as a phone.
Correct.
And to communicate, you have to use the phone app. So it's important.
And don't forget, conversations are the key, right?
Yes. You mentioned the marriage of ChatGPT and Zillow, and one of the new things is when you're doing a listing is you have to run your listing description through ChatGPT and give it very specific information about your listing and about who possible buyers are in that area who've been buying, and then make sure that your key terms are showing up in that listing. It used to be we wanted to maybe write, I think now we have to write more lifestyle, but we have to make sure those key terms are coming in there so that they get pulled. And it's interesting because sometimes things that I think are important was a little different than what ChatGPT and Zillow thought were important. Mm-hmm. So it's important, I think, to review and use all the tools you have available as an agent so that we can catch the eyes of the buyer. Be it the professional photos, they say we have 3 to 8 seconds to catch someone's eye, or be it the wording that we're choosing. So all of that is important in today's market, more so than ever.
You're correct. And one of the classes that has been in the most demand that I teach in 2025 is called Your Price Reduction is Not Marketing. That's the class. It's geared for real estate agents to think differently about how to market a property. Number one, in that class, we discuss tips around being preemptive, that you can acquire a listing at the kitchen table by leaning into curiosity, understanding the seller's goals, and not taking overpriced listings. And then every once in a while, if the market is shifting, conversations with sellers do need to come out of your pocket with a tool on how to be strategic if a price adjustment is required to realign the property to the market. And you touch on AI is most agents are using AI like a vending machine. And the reality is ChatGPT is not a vending machine. ChatGPT is a tool that can be leveraged in compatibility to any business owners. What real estate agents as a whole tend to do is expect that they put in a quick prompt and say something like make it better, and that ChatGPT is a miraculous miracle and is going to do their job for them. I'll nudge all real estate agents, if that's the practice you're doing, please give pause, because if it's that easy, then you're right, our job will be replaced. However, thinking differently about the relationship ChatGPT has now that Zillow is integrated into ChatGPT. I'll give you an exercise example that we as a team here in Orlando have been running, is understanding what is the consumer experience in ChatGPT. The consumer can go into ChatGPT and voice in, find me a home in Windermere, Florida with white kitchen cabinets that are modern in design. I don't want a backyard rear neighbor. I would like a fireworks view. They can just voice it in, and ChatGPT will send them the inventory. They don't even have to type. You could say that I want to have marble flooring, marble countertops, modern design that's been remodeled in the last 3 years. By the way, send me only homes that have been on the market for 7 days. That's all a voice command that can be sent. They can talk to it like a human. What are agents doing to optimize public remarks and optimize the tags on each image in the MLS to produce that listing in the command that the consumer will continue to do? So what you'll find, and I'll nudge you too, Jeannie, look at your MLS. You're probably going to find a whole lot of listings. The public remarks start like this. Welcome to 123 Banana Street, a beautiful home nestled in the corner of ABC community with 4 bedrooms and 3 baths, 3,600 square feet. That's what it's going to sound like. That's going to be the first 2 lines of many listings. For our agent friends, if you're writing it like this, please stop. That is a sea of sameness, and it shows that everyone's using ChatGPT to write their public remarks. Rather, think about it this way. It's a real estate agent pro job to earn every click. We have to earn every click on the photos. We have to earn every click of the public remarks. When you go to a portal, whether it's on an app or on desktop, there's a little section where the public remarks populate, and it will say read more or continue. In order to earn the click of them to hit continue, your first couple lines of content in the public remarks need to be the money information. What is the lifestyle the buyer will achieve if they choose to invest in this home? So for example, recently here in Windermere, we had a property with fireworks view. So what would you find in the public remarks? The first ones: fireworks views, gated community in Windermere, pond rear view, no rear neighbors. We got all them, and I think that one was remodeled in the last 3 years. So it said something like remodeled kitchen and baths 2023. We got all the money shot information, the true top tier marketing information up to the front. No welcome to 123 Banana Street. Everybody says the same thing. It's a sea of sameness. It's not helping agents differentiate their listings like marketers in the field of real estate.
No, I agree. That's that money shot. It's selling the lifestyle, and like you said, make your listing look different than everyone else.
That's
so
right.
that you can catch their attention.
One other thing's on photo optimization that I teach in your price reduction is not marketing is some listing agents will take the photos that the listing photographer sends to them. Listing photographers send over a batch of assets, and it'll be 30, 40, 50 photos. Typically, those photos are ordered in a sequential order in the manner in which the photographer shot the image. So you'll get the folder in a Google Drive. It might be 10, 20 images of the front of the house. And then after those, it might be 10 images of the kitchen, all different compositions, right? Then after that, 10, 15 images of the living room. You can tell the difference between a pro listing agent who's strategically optimizing the photos as compared to an everyday agent. Everyday agent will take those photos and they export it from their photographer, and they turn to their MLS and they import it into the MLS. So if you go to their listing It's 10 images of the front of the house, all in sequential order. Now, listing agents, think about this. What you're requesting of the viewer of this listing is that they have to click 10 times to get into something of noteworthiness on the inside of the house. Instead, optimize your photos. Ask yourself, what are the key 5 photos I want front and center? Is it the fireworks view? Is it the remodeled kitchen that remodeled in 2024? Is it the amazing rear yard that's perfect for entertaining? Get all those photos up front so that you're earning every click, that the viewer, the buyer, is going, ooh, Jeannie, you just pulled me in. Ooh, what's that? I'm going to click again. There's a story to be told. So the public remarks and the images both need to be optimized.
So I'm going to ask, I feel very strongly, I'm going to be biased on this, about putting floor plans in the photos. Because
Yes.
A lot of times photos don't show the layout and you're trying to figure out. And I'll usually, about my 6th photo in is usually a floor plan. And then I'll get going into the home itself. But I feel floor plans help someone visualize how the whole home is set up.
Smart, and I'm glad you're doing them. Now, for our agent viewers, please follow your MLS rules and regulations. Each of us throughout the United States may have different regulations. So Jeannie and I are going to say, you do your due diligence,
Right.
you need to follow your rules. And then beyond the rules, once they're compliant, there's strategy that is allowed. Having a floor plan, a 360 tour, a proper video walkthrough, every ounce of the property should be documented. Where it's positioned in the photo order can vary. Again, we have a little bit of time here today. So 2 things, we'll nudge Jeannie. You're going to have me back and or come to the class that I teach. We go deep into how to optimize the listings, where to place each one, because your answer lies in this, Jeannie. How's it appearing in the portals? Listing pros do audits that will say, okay, I'm going to look at the Zillow, I'm going to look at the realtor.com, and I'm going to understand, how did my listing, based on the presentation that I activated the listing to market, how did it syndicate to the portals? What does it look like on your app? What does it look like on desktop? Because the answer is going to depend based on where you are getting the most traffic. And the key is that you're thinking about it. You're already leaps and bounds ahead of most agents, Jeannie, because you're thinking about this. The average agent is just throwing everything into the MLS with a hope and a prayer and calling themselves a marketer. The very fact that you're saying, should I put it in the 6th position or the 4th position? That means you're winning and you're taking good care of your sellers, because the answer can depending on the property.
Yeah, I think it's so important now. We have to realize that we have to expand what we do to service our clients so that we catch the attention of the potential buyers. And through communicating and through our photos, this is all part of the story of what we present. And even how the home is presented once a potential buyer comes to the home. And my husband laughs because I drive around with a broom and a sweep pan in my car, because when I want my homes to show well, and it may mean I have to, this time of year in Georgia, sweep away some leaves, and making sure that the whole presentation, that their experience is all positive when they come to the home. I love there's a joke about realtors. Oh yeah, my property's getting a lot of showings, and then you get there and there's cobwebs on the lockbox. But I'm with my buyers, if I see that a sign has fallen or something's not right, I go and I reach out to the agent and let them know. But the thought in my head also is, when was the last time they went out to the house?
Yeah.
And you always have to make sure that your home is showing well. And that's just part of what we have to do as agents, is not only just making sure that the photos look well, but the house continues to look well and is maintained during the process.
It's not enough to earn the job. It's the pro's job to keep the job. And there's a lot of details in between an agent choosing to acquire a listing to getting the property to closed status and making sure that the sellers achieve what they were aiming to achieve within the time period they're looking for. I will say to both agents and sellers is the agents in the industry in 2025 and 2026 that are operating at a high level are walking into listing consultations with a goal to be better than their fee. That's number one.
I like that.
Every agent has a fee for service. Yes, we do. We earn an income by representing transactions. That's how we feed our family. You walk into a listing consultation committed to be better than your fee. How do you do that? You choose to lean into curiosity as a listing pro, to walk in and say, it's my job to uncover all the conditions that brought us to this moment. Not just why are you looking to sell, right? Thinking differently about while you lived in this home, what were 3 of the things you loved most? What was your favorite room? Tell me about that. Why was it your favorite room? Maybe it's the reading nook upstairs in the corner that overlooks the water in the back, right? Get deep. For the sellers, a benefit of your listing pro to dig deep as to why you called today. That's a sign that they care. That's a sign that the agent is willing to slow the process down just a hair, which will speed the outcome up tremendously. And that same listing pro, when they walk into the listing consultation, they're going to be committed to understanding with detail, what are you aiming to achieve by when? Because here's the final home point. Agents should not accept every listing. Agent pros are walking in and sometimes making the decision to say, because of the fact that you said you want to list the home for 30% over market value that we reviewed, and you need it to sell within the next 3 weeks, I may not be the best listing agent for you. Agents need to be prepared to say, it's not me. Now, some agents, as I mentioned earlier, they're collecting listings. They feel like if I just put the sign in the ground, I invest very little money to be the marketer to market this property, but I get the sign in the ground, then that listing collector who will take an overpriced listing, what they choose to do is just completely, it's like they have to keep knocking on the seller and just saying, price reduce, price reduce, price reduce. It's like their only tool in the tool chest. Bringing it home for sellers and agents is be the agent who leads with that curiosity, puts a focus on consulting and truly understanding what brought you to this moment. Because not all sellers should hit the market right now, and it should be okay for agents to admit that.
That's interesting. You talk about knowing why they want to sell and going on deeper. And I just had one of my sellers, I said, we're going to do a video about why you loved your home. And it was funny because I was going to go, I don't think I explained it well enough to him. I was going to go interview him and ask him questions. So he sat down, him and his wife, and he made the video. And I think that's another way of reaching people and seeing, so he could, this is the beautiful memories we have in the house. And now we're ready for another family to take over.
Sure.
So
there's
all
a
these kind of
questions that agents can ask that, remember, sea of sameness. If every agent goes in and asks the same questions to sellers, it's just sounding exactly the same. When you're wanting to set yourself apart as an agent, you really want to understand what drew you to move here in the first place. And by here, not just the 4 walls with the roof overhead, the town, the neighborhood, the subdivision, the region, the state. Unpack what their motivators are. One of the traps I fell into over a decade ago as a listing agent was not being as consultative. I did that. I've lived in that space and I've learned and become a stronger real estate leader. Is I put a listing up on the market. I didn't ask the right questions from the seller. And when I did the public remarks, I, at that time, it was about probably 15 years ago, wrote the public remarks in through my eyes, what I thought was best. I wasn't asking the questions of what drew the seller to love the home in the first place. So when I activated the listing on the market, a seller came back and the seller was not happy about the public remarks that I wrote. because it didn't make them feel that I represented the home the way they saw it. And the strong agent today will take that information from the seller and say, you know what? The seller said the reading nook upstairs in the corner that overlooks the water in the backyard, the lake or the pond, was important. I'm going to include that because likely the next buyer will also find it important. And there's all different approaches that agents can take to make sure they stand out, and that's one of them.
This has been great, Renee. You're not only helping educate sellers for how they should be interviewing their listing agents, but you're also helping taking listing agents to that next level. And I want to really thank you for coming on today. I think you help make us better agents and better able to serve our clients and our sellers and buyers. So I want to thank you for joining today. Anyone who's looking for homes in the Windermere area in Orlando, Renee's information will be down below, and we're always here for you to reach out. And I want to thank you again for joining us today.
Thanks for tuning into the Posner Property Perspective. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and found it helpful as you navigate your real estate journey. Remember, whether you're buying, selling, or just exploring the market, I'm here to help to make the process smooth, exciting, and stress-free. Let's take the next step together. Contact me today. I'd love to hear from you and make your real estate wishes come true.